Hello, everyone, and welcome to LaKesha and Friends. And I'm so excited to have my friend this evening, Pastor Carlton Lynch. We met a couple of months ago, and we were on a panel together, and we've had some really interesting conversations. And we don't agree on everything, but we but we both have a heart for people. We have a heart for ministry, and I know that Pastor Carlton's heart is truly for his community and for his people. And so that's one of the reasons I wanted him to be one of the first guests to come on. So, Pastor Lynch, please introduce yourself to everyone.
Well, first, let me say thank you for the opportunity to come on your platform. You've been on mine a couple of times, and I'm just always amazed by your train of thought. And I'm sure within these 15 minutes, you're going to get me all the way together. And so I appreciate you. I pastor in Benton Harbor, Michigan, Pilgrim Rest Baptist Church. I'm born and raised in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I have two beautiful, nerve-wracking daughters, one 18 and one 16,
Ooh.
and one granddaughter who is 1 years old. And so I'm just thankful for the opportunity to be on to talk to you about something that me and you both agree with.
Finally, right?
And that is voting.
Yes, definitely, definitely. And I didn't know you were a grandpa. I'm gonna have a new nickname for you now.
I tell her it's Big Daddy. I don't.
Okay.
We don't do the granddad thing. But yeah, I am.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I think one of the fondest memories I have of you and just being a part of your social network was the day that you were at the protest. I don't remember what city you were in because you weren't even in your city, but you were at a city and they were out protesting and they were just kind of like standing around. And you went and really got them fired up to show them how to protest. Share with us, like, why protesting is so important and the power that you see in protesting.
Because we have the opportunity to vote in 2020 because of protests.
Right.
And what I love about it, even when officials did not agree with the marching, that didn't deter or distract those like Dr. King and those like John Lewis. And so I just believed, even when I was at that Pacific March, I was in my hometown
Okay.
in Fort Wayne, and I wasn't there for the march. I was there just for family. And somebody said there's a march downtown, and that just there was a protest downtown. That's like hitting the lottery for me.
Yeah.
And that was after the murder of
Mhm.
George Floyd
Yep.
and Breonna Taylor. And when I went, a lot of people, African Americans, we feel like we've won when Caucasians are there with us.
Mhm.
I don't think that we won until Caucasians don't just protest and march with us, but also vote with us and vote for change, with us. And so they were just standing around like we were at a pep rally, or something. And so I just moved in, and no justice, no peace, no racist police, and screaming Black Lives Matter, and it went up from there. And not doing it just to be seen, but doing it to bring attention and awareness to what we're screaming and what we're protesting about. I think a lot of people get caught up in how many people are there. That's
Mhm.
important. How many chants we can come up with. That's important. But I believe that we got to really dig into the root of the issues and really not just protest, not just march. That's the first leg, but we got to move from protest to legislation. We got to begin to vote to really bring about changes. Al Sharpton say this, and I'll leave it alone. He says all the time, marching and protesting doesn't change anything. It just turns the light on to what we want changed. And so So
Yeah, and
that's
so
why
that was going to be my next question, because a lot of people who protest, there is an assumption that those people don't vote. And so when you're out protesting, especially with like a younger generation that, feels like the system doesn't work for them, so there's really no point in us, getting involved, how do you encourage them to take that next step and to understand that they do have to actually vote as well and not just to be in the streets protesting?
Well, I say all the time, just like protesting and marching doesn't change anything, it just turns the light on. Voting is just another part of the solution. But if you just vote but never get involved in even holding elected officials to the fire, a lot of people are voting this November, prayerfully they are. That's our hopes, that's our desires, but we have to know what we're voting for. I'm not just voting against Trump. I'm voting for change, and he's not the only one that I believe, LaKesha, that has to go. He's just one of the leaders that I believe has to go. There's a lot more that carries his same spirit,
Mhm.
and so I think a lot of young people, they're defeated and they're discouraged rather in voting, because the real truth is we have to do more. And I appreciate you, because I know you'll be one to do it, to not just deal with voter registration but deal with also voter education.
Right, right.
What is it that we want out of this? And I think a lot of young people are discouraged because the real sense, they don't see any change.
Yeah. So what are some of the issues in your community? Because I know one day I saw that you were out, feeding some children and having conversations with them around violence in the community. How do you make the connection for people between like violence in your community and elections? Like who's responsible for that, and how can voting have an impact in that area?
Well, voting will have an impact because of gun laws.
Hmm.
There's so many guns on the street. Unfortunately, there's a law in Michigan that I don't really support. It's called open carry,
Right.
meaning you don't have to have a license. Long as the gun is shown, on your hip, you will not go to jail. I think that is a dangerous law for people just to have guns. So my issue is not really so much the voting, in that area, but I also got to deal with our babies. So many times we focus on, the 29 and the 30-year olds, but I just believe in the Bible. You got to train up a child, and so I just decided to go get a whole bunch of pizza, get on the grass, and tell the kids don't play with guns. That's how they used to do with us.
Right,
And I
right.
just think sometimes we just focus in. It's not a one-shot approach that's going to fix the problems in our communities. In this community, it's not really a lot of police brutality. It's
Right,
more brutality on each other.
right.
We're shooting and killing each other at an alarming rate. And so, how does voting connect that? There's not enough inner city jobs.
Mm.
There's not enough going on in the inner cities, for kids and for young people. There's not enough programming and so forth. So I'm looking for an elected official they're going to bring things in our community that's going to help be a change, and going to be able to help show discipline to young people and so forth. So I think it goes hand in hand.
Oh, I definitely agree. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because I don't think that we understand, one, the way gun laws play a role. But, my question has always been around this is like, how are these young people getting guns? Because most of them, like, they're not going to gun shops. They're not going to gun shows. So, like, when do we get to the point where we start dealing with, like, how did the guns get into their hands?
LaKesha, I think whenever you get that answer, I want to be on the live, because I'm being serious. I'll be thinking that also, because I remember when I was a young person, I don't remember people just at school with guns.
Right.
I don't remember nobody I could just go to at 14 and buy a gun. I really don't. And maybe I was sheltered. Maybe it was going on, but I wasn't exposed to it. But there is something that's so ill that we realize that kids do not make guns, they don't ship guns, but they can get their hands on a gun faster than a school book.
Right.
And so I don't know where it's coming at. I don't know how they're being shipped into town and so forth. I am dumb on that. I'm a church kid, to be honest with you. All this street hood stuff, I'm learning as I go. But we had to figure out where they're coming from. We had to figure out, in all sincerity, how to bring about a change to that. And also, let me say this, Keisha, if we cannot change that fact overnight, let's deal with changing the heart
Right.
of the young person, that even though they can have access to guns, they still don't want one.
Right. Right. And I think, that's one of the issues that can be frustrating to people who are doing the work, because it's almost like there are fires on all sides. So on the one side, you got, the violence that's already happening. Then you have the kids who don't have access to resources. Then you have adults who don't have jobs. And then you have guns and drugs coming into the community. So it's kind of figuring out, like, where do I start? So how do you figure out where you're going to spend your energy and how you're going to be involved in your community?
So, a lot of people, pastors used to get mad at me because I used to, in my immature day as an activist, I used to always say things like, man, these preachers ain't doing nothing. You know what I mean? And I like how you eloquently asked the question, because the truth is, everybody has to find their area.
Right.
Everybody's not going to do the same thing. Everybody's not teaching math. Everybody's not, there's a multiplicity of jobs in order to even run a school and even to bring about change in your community. My job as an activist is to bring attention and awareness.
Mhm.
I am the loudmouth. I tell and I expose the problem that's going on in our community. And I think that's where I spend my energy at. My energy is people always, for some reason, tell me what's going on. And I don't believe they tell me what's going on to keep a secret. So what I do, we have issues right now where people are having issues with the voting locations. They're changing things just overnight, and it's becoming confusing, especially to our seniors. So what I decided to do is next week, I'm going to visit every polling location. And when I hear about the issues that they're changing, I want to be able to scream real loud, because I don't want, and I'm not just screaming to the system, I'm also screaming to other voters, because I don't want them to get distracted or discouraged where they just say, to hell with it, I ain't going to vote. They change and stuff. And that's really what people and politicians really are desiring. They're trying to make it so hard and so difficult that people will stay at home. So we got to have these conversations like you're doing right now for the next 48 days or so, and say, whatever you do, don't stay home. We are not going to make excuses. We're going to make adjustments.
Exactly. And that's what I've been telling people, is that, we have to start having these conversations, because there are a lot of like little micro techniques that they're using. Like you said, changing the locations, putting disinformation into our community, because some of the articles I see people share, I'm like, you didn't find that yourself. Like somebody like fed that to you. And if you look at, who wrote the article, if you look at whether it's an opinion piece or whether it's actual fact piece, like there's just so much information that we have to be careful about sharing, because other people take it for gospel, and sometimes it's not. It's meant to distract us. So I promised you I was only going to keep you for 15 minutes. So as we're getting ready to close, like, what message do you want to send, especially to young people, about voting and why it is so important that they get out and not only vote in this election, but that they make voting a part of their life, to be civically engaged in this process?
I will say this. I knew that was going to be one of the main questions when you think about voting, especially for our people. I would say this. A young lady, not young lady, an older lady, called me a few days ago, and she said, Pastor, you keep interviewing people on your Facebook page, and you haven't asked me one time. She's a civil rights giant in Fort Wayne. And she started sending me pictures and telling me stories that the same time in Selma, I forget she was from Alabama.
Oh, wow.
And that whole time, all of that was going on. She'd been attacked by dogs, water hoses on her. She's seen people that she started marching with that didn't make it back to the church. And I think about, that bloody Sunday when Dr. King stayed at home with his family on this specific day and allowed the marchers to go forth because he didn't want it to be personality driven. And
Right.
he encouraged them to go ahead and march. And on that day, it got crazy on that Pettis Memorial Bridge, and
Mm-hmm.
people left on stretchers. People were in hospitals. Some people didn't even make it. You think about the march that Dr. King called to go forth in the march, and even white people that showed up to march, white preachers from Boston were killed. You think about all the people, lives who were lost, and you think about we don't have enough strength. You hear me? You telling me that the only thing we can do is go out and march and put on a T-shirt that say Black Lives Matter and really disrupt, cities and stop traffic, block intersections, and all of that. The truth of the matter is, I believe this: too many people before us have given their life to this. And I just believe it's disrespectful for any African American, any Black man, any Black woman to not vote, thinking about those that look like us went through what they went through just to give us the right and the freedom to be able to cast a vote.
So I am going to ask you one question that's going to be a little harder or a little bit of pushback. So what do you say to the people who say, like, they don't care about that? Because that's what I've heard, like, some younger people, basically say, like, so that, that doesn't resonate with them. Like, how do you, like, resist, like, losing your cool and to help them to understand how important that really is? Because there are a lot of people who don't care.
It takes time, honestly. My daughter, my youngest, is 16. She's real nonchalant
Mm,
about everything. And a lot of people don't understand what really transpired. Only thing they see is 2020.
right.
And the reality, you and we're in the fight. So we see it from another lens. So I just say to people that are struggling with it and saying, well, it don't matter, that's them, that ain't me, and all
Right.
that type of stuff. I mean, you just got to keep driving. It's kind of like this. It's kind of like this, LaKesha. My mother, I've never been big on cancer. People used to ask me to donate to Cancer Society. I may throw them a couple dollars. I might not. It just wasn't a big deal to me. But my feeling changed when my mother was only supposed to be in the surgery for 3 hours and ended up being in there for 13. So
Wow.
now, because I have a one-on-one experience with it now my whole feeling, you asked me for a cancer awareness donation. Now I'm like, y'all got cash out,
Got
you know
it.
what I mean?
Yeah, Pastor
Y'all
Lynch
got Zelle,
in
y'all
October.
can do. You see what I'm saying? And I would hate for people to have to go through situations to understand
Right.
how hard it was. Just yesterday, I was on a conversation with Michael Brown, mother from Ferguson, Leslie. And you think about it, she's more involved now than she ever has. You know what
Right.
I mean? And she didn't ask for it. It's just how life turned out. So I say, before life shifts into your direction, get involved now, as the preacher would say, while the blood is running warm in your veins.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening and for sharing your heart about the work that you're doing. And I pray that God continues to bless you with the strength to do this work, because I know that it can get exhausting, especially when you're fighting for people who really, like, don't care that you're fighting for them. I think, like, that's the hardest part, is when you're trying to be the advocate and the voice for people who just, like, do you.
Let me tell you something. There's something that you said to me a while back when the Black Lives Matter mural was in Charlotte,
Oh,
and
yeah.
and we met and we seen this homeless guy sitting there. And every day of my life, I'm telling you the truth, since that day, when I see someone in need, I try to really be an example. And you got me to that point. Just because It cannot be about a statement or a saying. We got to put our hands to the plow. We got to really work. And what good is it for me to paint Black Lives Matter and I won't help a Black life?
Right.
So I want to tell you thank you for everything that you're doing, and I pray that these days to come that more people will be engaged into the voting process and realize through these conversations, most of all, it's an honor to be able to vote.
It is. It is. Well, thank you again so much for joining us. Thank you to all of our listeners and viewers. If you all have any questions in the comments on this post, feel free to tag Pastor Lynch, and I'm sure he will reach out and respond to your comments. But we're just honored to have you as a part of this conversation. You guys can tune back in. You'll see my announcement tomorrow about my next live guest. So we have a diverse group of people that I'm going to be bringing on and just talking about their perspectives with voting, because we all have different passions around voting. And I just want to hear people's stories. And you guys know I love to ask questions. So thank you so much. And we will see you in the next broadcast.